Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel, and today I want to take a look at the final round of results from the qualification for the World Cup 2026. Now, before I get into that though, I want to take a look also at the Champions League final, which is happening as of recording this in about 42 hours, and before that as well, I will also acknowledge that we've already had the finals of the Europa League and the Conference League, and I'll just very readily admit that I did not watch those. But in both cases, we had the team from the Premier League win, or the English team. We had Aston Villa win against Freiburg, and we also had Crystal Palace beat Rayo Vallecano. And I think neither of them were particularly. Actually, no, they were pretty different in terms of how easily the English side won. Aston Villa won like 3-0, 2-0, something like that, whereas Crystal Palace only really scored one goal against Rayo Vallecano, but they held on to that lead and they won the Conference League. So now we move to the highest echelon of European club football, which is of course the Champions League, where we're going to have Paris Saint-Germain versus Arsenal. Now, I think knowing now what I didn't know then, I think I'm very happy to say that I predicted too strongly for Bodo Glimt. I was thinking, Arsenal wasn't scoring a lot of goals, but Bodo Glimt was able to strike against all sorts of different teams, Atletico, Inter and stuff like that, and I thought maybe they had a shot against Arsenal. But if you look at some of their stats, you can see here Arsenal conceded 2 goals in the 6 knockout matches in the Champions League, and before that they, I think, conceded 4 at the most, which is absolutely ridiculous. So in this case, I would say there are firmly 2 sides in Europe which can outscore Arsenal. One of them is Bayern Munich, who were eliminated by PSG, and the other is PSG. I think that in terms of the spectacle going on here, it really does feel like unstoppable force versus immovable object. I think Arsenal right now, Arteta's Arsenal, is the closest thing to an immovable object that you're going to get in modern football, modern club football anyway. They've just been really, really good at defense and not letting through a lot of goals. And ultimately, I think there are 2 sides that can score against them and keep that lead, and Bodo Glimt is not one of them. Sorry. Even if they had beaten Sporting, I think Bodo Glimt would have failed to score against Arsenal. I think it would end either 0-0 on aggregate, which would be disgusting, or it would end the exact same way as Sporting did, 1-0 on aggregate, 1 goal from Gyökeres or something like that. But that's in the past now. Arsenal obviously also then went on to beat Atletico, but that's in the past now, and now we look to the final, where we've got PSG versus Arsenal, and you know what? I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think PSG wins this. Now, I think if you're an Arsenal fan, if you're a gooner, as they say, you have reason to feel confident that you can go in there and get a result. But at the same time, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think there are 2 teams which can score against Arsenal and defend that lead, and those are PSG and Bayern Munich. And we saw what PSG did to Bayern, especially in the second leg, where they had a they were able to defend their lead that they had inherited from the previous leg, and I think that is kind of the hallmark of a truly great club side in Europe. And if they can defend so well against the barrage of attacks from Bayern Munich, what's to say that they can't do that against Arsenal? I think the key here for PSG is just to try as much as possible to not let Arsenal get ahead, because then they're chasing a lead, and that could be challenging. But they have overcome that kind of challenge in the past. Ultimately, though, I do not see PSG winning by more than one goal. This could be a 2-1. This could be a 1-0. This could be a 0-0. This could be a 1-1. But it's absolutely not going to be a 2-2. I don't think Arsenal are capable of scoring more than one goal. So I think that either PSG wins in normal time or in the 120 minutes with a 2-1 win or a 1-0, something from another banger from Kvaratskhelia or Dembele or something like that. Or they draw after 120 minutes, 0-0, 1-1, and then PSG wins on penalties. And I think that's kind of my prediction. You can see here on the right, that's kind of the favorite of the bookmakers as well, that PSG are going to win. And I think that regardless of whether it goes to a penalty shootout or not, I think the side that comes out victorious will be PSG, and they will do the double. They will have successfully defended their title from last year, except of course the scoreline is going to be a lot lower. There's not going to be a 5-0 in this game. God, could you imagine? But yeah, I do think that PSG, on the whole, they have the firepower to score against Arsenal, and they absolutely have the defense to defend against any attempts that Arsenal might make to score against them. If they can defend against a Bayern Munich that scored 5 goals or 4 goals or whatever it was, they can absolutely defend against Arsenal, and it's just a matter of whether PSG can break through, and I think they can. I think there's not going to be a lot of goals. PSG wins against Arsenal by at most 1 goal, if not 0 goals. But yeah, I do see PSG doing the double here. But even so, I think this has been an extraordinarily successful season for Arteta. He won the damn Premier League for the first time in 20 years or whatever for Arsenal, and this side has conceded so few goals, it's getting kind of boring to watch at this point. But yeah, they're not there to play fun, free-flowing football. They're just there to defend, and hope that Gyökeres gets something or another. And yeah, I don't think that's gonna hold up fully, at least against PSG. But like I said, if you're a Gooner, I think you should feel good about your chances. I don't think this is as clear cut as maybe what my previous introduction put it as, but I think while Arsenal absolutely have a chance going into this, I think PSG will ultimately win. They'll win by 1 goal, or they'll win in the penalty shootout. But their attack, I think, is just a little bit too strong for Arsenal to defend against, and I think PSG does the double. Alright, now with that out of the way, let's finally get into international football, starting with DR Congo versus Jamaica in, I think, what was the path 1 of the intercontinental playoff, where DR Congo beat Jamaica 1-0. Now, this was a lot more perilous than it really needed to be. You can see here, Tuanzebe, he did score. It was a kind of scrappy goal, I would say, but it was in the 100th minute, and it was kind of like a Cape Verde Eswatini situation where the first half, this was something that Cape Verde was expected to knock it out of park, but for the first half, it was 0-0, and it was weirdly perilous for Cape Verde. And this was the first 100 minutes for the DR Congo versus Jamaica game, and I think this shows something going into the World Cup for DR Congo. You can see here, this is the lineup. They had Wisa, so you would think they'd be a little bit better going forward, but Wisa didn't really do much, I'll be honest. It was Twanzebe who actually scored. Bakambu was okay, I think. Chanzon Bemba was alright, but yeah, I also think the goalkeeper, Pazi Nzao, I think that's how you pronounce it, I think he made some pretty good saves as well. But overall, this reflects a problem for this DR Congo side going into the World Cup, which is that they really struggle to get the ball in the back of the net. They've got decent chances. I think the Jamaican goalkeeper, what's his name, Andre Blake, he made some pretty good saves as well, I would say. But yeah, they really struggle to score, which is going to be difficult because they're going up against sides like Portugal, sides like Uzbekistan, and I can't remember if it was Ecuador or Colombia, one of the two. But they defend very, very well, but the problem is they can't really score that much, and the fear is that they end up drawing every single one of their games and then getting grouped a la New Zealand 2010. So yeah, that is a concern for them. They have difficulties going forward and getting the goal in the back of the damn net. But I will say Jamaica fought pretty valiantly in this one. I think if it were Curacao in this situation, I don't even know if they would have gotten to the final in the first place. So it was very lucky for Curacao to have qualified directly to the World Cup, and Jamaica, they once again bottled the qualification despite having been the initial big favorite in their group of qualification. But now they've bottled it, and they've gone to the interconfederation playoff, and they failed to beat DR Congo, who defended, like I said, very well. But they themselves also struggled to score. It was, like I said, Twanzebe who ended up sending a goal into the back of the net. But yeah, so it wasn't a great offensive display for DR Congo, but they got the job done, and now they can look forward to the World Cup, where they'll be, like I said, in a group with Portugal and Uzbekistan, and I think Colombia. And yeah, so that was the first, playoff for the intercontinental playoff, and we had DR Congo beat Jamaica 1-0. And our second intercontinental playoff was Iraq versus Bolivia, which was won by Iraq 2-1. Now, obviously, like I mentioned in my previous videos, these two are a lot closer in ranking, I would say, than DR Congo and Jamaica. I think DR Congo are much more of a beast, much more of a towering giant going up against Jamaica, but Iraq and Bolivia, I think, are a lot closer. But it's interesting because I was following this kind of as I was coming home from a lecture, university lecture, and I had barely even gotten out my phone, and Iraq had already scored. So it was kind of insane. But Al Hamadi scored in the 10th minute, and then after that, the Bolivian wonder boy Paniagua, of course, scored to equalize for Bolivia. And in the second half, I think it was Ayman Hussein who scored the second goal for Iraq to definitively send Iraq to the World Cup for the first time since, I want to say, 1986. I can't actually remember the exact number, but the exact year, but yeah, this was a needed result for Iraq. Obviously, you can see here, interestingly enough, Bolivia actually had a lot more possession, but and a lot more shots as well, but in the end, they just weren't able to convert a lot of their chances, and it was Iraq in the end who weathered the storm, and they successfully pulled 2 goals out to go ahead, and they won against Bolivia, a Bolivia that wasn't playing at high altitude. If this was played in La Paz, for example, this would have absolutely been a sweep from Bolivia, but this wasn't, and Iraq advanced to the World Cup thanks to 2 goals from Al Hamadi and Ayman Hussein. Now, I could talk about what they're gonna do at the World Cup, and I mean, come on, there's not really a point. People have talked about this, but basically, Graham Arnold's greatest achievement is getting them there. Whatever they do at the World Cup is a bonus. If they get a goal, amazing. If they get a point, even amazing, because looking at the group they're in, that's going to be very, very difficult. I do think there is a chance. I'm not saying the chance is particularly large, but there is a chance that Iraq could score 1 goal against Norway, because Norway's defense is, let's just be honest, not great, but in the end, Norway is still easily going to win that match. 3-1, 4-1, I don't know. It's just way too strong of an attack for Iraq to deal with, and Norway will be feeling good since that's actually their first match. Whereas France and Senegal have to face each other before either of them go to face Norway. So Norway will be feeling good, they will be feeling fresh, and yeah, I just don't think Iraq really stands a chance in that match, or in any of the matches, frankly. But the point is to have a good time. Am I right? They're going to be there at the World Cup for the first time in decades, and that's really all people are asking for. This group of players, maybe they just don't have the sauce to really do much, and even if they did, they wouldn't be able to do much in this group anyway. I feel like any Asian team, even Japan, would struggle here, and teams like Korea, teams like Iran would definitely struggle in this group as well, with France, Norway, and Senegal. And so I don't think it's really a shame or a crazy thing to say that Iraq are not going to do anything in their group. But again, the important thing is that they are there. Graham Arnold has brought them to the World Cup. They have brought a team. He has brought a team in the playoffs to the World Cup for the second time now. The first time being his native Australia, of course. And I think that's really all he could have asked to do, and that's probably the end of the journey. I mean, enjoy the games against Erling Haaland, against Kylian Mbappe, but don't really expect to do anything in those matches. But yeah, for this match, Iraq defeated Bolivia in the intercontinental playoff, and that rounds out all of our intercontinental playoff winners that will be going into the World Cup. That will be DR Congo and Iraq, who are the 2 highest seeded teams in those playoffs. Moving on now to Europe, and we have Path A of the UEFA World Cup playoffs, where we had Bosnia and Herzegovina versus Italy. Now, this was a little bit of a wild ride. Moise Kean scored in the 15th minute off of a weird mistake from the goalkeeper. For much of the rest of the match, there wasn't a lot going on until Bastoni got red carded for some silly challenge that he made. And then, in the second half, Tabakovic put one in the back of the net, and that put them equal on 1-1. So we went to a penalty shootout, although I will say for much of the game it was Bosnia dominating the ball. Italy didn't really have that many chances to score or even to bring the ball into the other side. But yeah, they went to a penalty shootout. You can see here, this is what happened. And the final penalty for Bosnia was scored by none other than Esmir Bayraktarovic, who is actually American. He's Bosnian American. His parents are actually refugees from Bosnia during the Bosnia genocide in the 90s, and they moved to the United States. And actually, Esmir, he grew up in the United States through the American system, even played, I think, a game or two as in part of the youth, I think like U19 or U17 USMNT. But actually, when it came time to declare sort of his allegiance for the national team at the adult level, he decided to go with Bosnia, the country of origin of his parents. So he is American, but he does speak Bosnian, of course. But he grew up with his idol being Edin Dzeko, and of course, in this match, if we can get a look at the lineup here, Bayraktarovic actually played alongside Dzeko, and Bayraktarovic was actually the one to score the winning penalty against Italy and against Donnarumma to bring Bosnia back to the World Cup. Now, it's a very interesting thing. You can see here, like I mentioned, this was a lot of the momentum was on Bosnia's side, even though they weren't really able to score that many goals from here. But it was a lot of possession and a lot of bringing the ball to the other side from Bosnia. A lot of very ferocious attacking, if you will. But yeah, they weren't really able to capitalize on that, so they went to the penalty shootout, where Pio Esposito actually failed to score his first penalty, which wasn't a great sign. But I don't really fault Pio Esposito on this. I think he is like one of the few true rising stars of this Italian national team, and I feel like it was a lot of pressure for him to be the one to take the first penalty, and he crumbled under that pressure. What can you do, right? And then Tonali scored, and also and then Brian Cristante, who is actually Canadian, funnily enough, he failed to score, and then Bayraktarovic scored, and that was that. So, not exactly a dominant performance from Bosnia per se. They had to go to a penalty shootout to win this, but they've now won 2 penalty shootouts against pretty good European sides. And should Bosnia make it to the knockouts, maybe they could hope to emulate something like that in the knockouts, and maybe even make it to a round of 16. Who knows? I don't think it's that likely, depending on who they play, obviously. But ultimately, it is possible, and I think this result should give them hope that they can do something at the World Cup, where they will be in the group with Qatar, Canada, and Switzerland. Now, I think most people will have penned this group down as Switzerland winning, Canada taking second, and then Bosnia third, and Qatar last. And I think that is also the most likely scenario. I think it matters the most, the match between Bosnia and Canada. I think that is going to determine who gets second in the group. But I do think even if they don't necessarily win against Canada, I think they do still have a pretty good shot of going to the knockouts, because of what some people call, I think, a bum game or something like that, or just like Mickey Mouse game. I don't know the exact terminology, but they have a free game in their group in the form of Qatar, who they are very likely to be able to defeat, because Qatar is basically just not that great, I'll be honest. Like in the World Cup setting, even in the World Cup that they were hosting, they got grouped in the World Cup that they were hosting. So, they're not even hosting this time. So what hope do you have for them to actually do something? Am I right? So yeah, I think Bosnia should feel good going into Group B. But for now we have a result of them defeating Italy in the World Cup playoffs, and Italy is bested by a Balkan side for the second World Cup playoff in a row. There are a lot of things you could say about this Italian side. I think Italian football right now is at an all-time low. They did sack Gattuso after the loss to Bosnia. So maybe it's a sign of something better to come. But Italy are kind of down bad right now, and it's not really certain how exactly they plan to rebuild on their glory days, so as to speak. But that's not relevant to us right now. What is relevant is that Bosnia are returning to the World Cup after having been there last time in 2014. And one common thread between these two World Cups, Edin Dzeko. And this will probably be Edin Dzeko's final World Cup. Unless they qualify again, which I think that would be great. But even then, I think Edin Dzeko is very much at the end of his international football career. I think he might hold out for the Euros, but that's about it. I do not see him at the next World Cup, even if Bosnia qualify, which, at this point is not necessarily a guaranteed. Moving on now to Path B of the UEFA qualification playoff, we had Sweden defeat Poland 3-2. Man, from going from losing to freaking Kosovo to now defeating two pretty damn good European sides in the playoff, I think some kudos has to be given to Graham Potter. Like people have mentioned, he's not Swedish, but he has managed Swedish sides for quite a long time, and he knows well how the Swedish system works and how the Swedish mentality works in relation to football, and he got the job done. His first few games were still during the playoffs, and they didn't look great. I think it was like a 4-1 defeat against Switzerland and a 1-1 against Slovenia. But things started looking up when they defeated Ukraine. What was it, 3-1, 3-0, something like that. And now they've only gone and beaten their neighbor 3-2. And unfortunately, this also means, I believe, that we might never see Lewandowski at a World Cup ever again. Obviously, Lewandowski is up there in his age. And I don't know, and I think most people don't know whether he has the legs or the energy to really do the World Cup in 2030. So yeah, unfortunately we probably won't be getting Lewandowski at a World Cup ever again, but that sucks, but it is what it is. Sweden did beat them. It was a goal earlier on by Anthony Elanga, I think that's his name. He plays for like Newcastle or Sunderland or something like that. But there was an equalizer from Zalewski, but then near the end of the first half, Lagerbielke actually, put in another goal, and then Swiderski also equalized again. But near the very end of the game, who else to finish off the job but the man of the hour, Victor Gyökeres. Now, he's been doing pretty good things for Arsenal. Like I mentioned, he might just win the whole damn Champions League against PSG. But Gyökeres has been really, really good for Sweden in the last couple of matches. And a lot of the goals have come from him, especially considering that Alexander Isak has been very much injured. or at very least very injury prone, and yeah, so you can see that actually a lot of the ball was with Poland. You can see here they had 67% possession, but Sweden actually had more XG, and ultimately it comes down to the fact that Sweden were able to better take care of their chances. They had fewer shots, but they had a higher chance of actually finishing those shots, or at least get close, than Poland did. They had a lot of the ball, but they weren't really able to capitalize on that, and that cost them dearly. You know, you can see here, I think, some underrated players I kind of want to mention are Yasin Ayari, who's playing for Sweden, obviously, and he's very much underrated. I would say he's not brought up as much as someone like an Isak, like Gyökeres. Benjamin Nygren as well was also pretty impactful, I would say, and obviously Gyökeres is Gyökeres. But they had also subbed on Pietuszewski. I always say Pietruszewski. No, it's Pietuszewski. But he didn't really do much, I'll be honest. But this was the lineup. Obviously, Gyökeres at the front. If you check out the lineup for the World Cup, which I'm not going to cover in this video because I just don't know enough about the different players, Graham Potter did call up Alexander Isak, so it remains to be seen whether he's going to try and play both of them together out front, or are they just going to play one or the other, alternatingly. Is that a word? But yeah, I don't know if they're going to play both Gyökeres and Isak out front, but it remains to be seen. But I think right now Gyökeres is really a really reliable set of legs for the national team. He's been doing really good things for the Swedish national team, and I think in their group against the Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia, Gyökeres could stand to do some damage. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a top goal scorer, but he could do some damage. And the fact is, a lot of Swedes did not even expect that they would qualify for the World Cup to begin with after having such a disastrous qualifying campaign. Then they end up beating the two sides in the playoff, and then just kind of pardon my language, they shithouse their way to a World Cup, and they don't really know what to do with that. So there's not really a lot of expectation, I think, from Swedish fans on their national team. Obviously they're gonna hope to get out of the group, and I do think it's possible, but that would have to depend on them beating Tunisia, I think, and at least getting a draw against Japan or the Netherlands, which they are fully capable of doing. I don't think you should necessarily downplay this side, but I think they're in a pretty favorable group for them to get out of the group. But that is Sweden back at the World Cup for the first time since, I have no idea, like 2018 or something. And that means that we now have two Nordic countries at the World Cup this year, not just Norway. So, Sweden defeated Poland 3-2 in the playoffs. The UEFA playoffs, after having lost basically every single game that wasn't against Slovenia in the actual qualification campaign. So you can hate what they did, but that's the system. If you can get your national team to wake up in such a short time, I kind of feel like you deserve it. And once again, kudos to Graham Potter. Now we move on to Path C of the UEFA playoffs, where Turkey defeated Kosovo 1-0 in Kosovo. Now, I think this was always going to be close. I think I made that very clear in my previous video. I just wasn't sure whether this was going to go one way or the other, and I think, in hindsight, it was probably favorable to assume that Turkey would come out on top, having been, the higher seeded team and such. But I think my point still stood in that Turkey, despite the name brand, despite the big players on their team, have kind of a goal scoring problem, at least as of late. They've got Yildiz, they've got Yilmaz, they've got obviously Güler, but somehow the goals just aren't coming through, and I feel like that is a testament both to them and their current lack in goal scoring abilities, and also on Kosovo, who have just improved massively over, I want to say, the last year or so. They've just gotten so much better that it's really tough for a team as strong as Turkey to really do anything against them. And in the end, it was 0-0 going into halftime, but Artukoglu managed to score a goal in the second half, and that was the only goal. There were stretches where you can see that Kosovo actually really had some momentum, and the possession was pretty close. I would say not that close, but it was pretty close. They had a similar number of shots, but ultimately it was Artukoglu who managed to score, and it wasn't even an assist from Yildiz or Güler or anything like that. It was actually Kokcu. But you can take a look at the lineup. I don't think there's anything particularly surprising about either of these. There was Yildiz, there was Güler, Muriqi, Slani, Hojam, Muslia, so on and so forth, right? Nothing super surprising from this lineup. And you can see here, you've got some good results on both ends. 2-2 Spain is not an easy thing for Turkey to achieve. But, again, like I said, at home, they only scored one goal against Romania, which really made me worry for the chances against Kosovo, whereas, Kosovo kind of smashed Slovakia. Well, they didn't really smash, but it was a thriller, but they put 4 past Slovakia, and I'm sure they must have been feeling good. But Turkey is pretty solid in their defense. I wouldn't necessarily qualify them as a defensive side, but they're pretty good at their defense, and they were able to defend against any chances that they that the Kosovans actually generated. But Kosovo drew 1-1 Switzerland. Obviously, I don't think Switzerland really cared at that point in time. They were already going to qualify directly, but it's still an impressive result for a Kosovo, which I think even just a year ago wasn't really doing much. And I think this should give them hope going into the Euros. I think that they will feel good going to Euros, that they might have a genuine chance to qualify for the Euros against some maybe bigger teams. We'll have to see what happens there, but for now, let's go back to Turkey, who will be in the group with the USA and also Paraguay and Australia. And now, some people are predicting that Turkey will top the group, being the European side and all that. And I think that is definitely possible. However, I wouldn't be so sure about it as some other people have been. Turkey, if these last few matches have been any indication, they have some difficulty putting the goal at the back of the net. And I worry that if this carries over to the World Cup, then again, this could be like another New Zealand 2010 where they draw with everyone and then get grouped anyway. So I don't know exactly how I feel about their chances. Obviously, like people have said, this is the European side. Theoretically, you should feel good going into the World Cup against 3 sides that are all nominally worse, but I wouldn't be so I wouldn't feel so good yet. I think we have to wait until the games themselves to see what happens, and also looking at the schedule to determine exactly how things are going to go. But yeah, Turkey has now made the World Cup for the first time since 2002. Could you believe that? And in 2002, they made it to the damn semifinals. And, it remains to be seen whether they can do that again. Probably not. But it is still a great achievement for them to be back in the World Cup, knowing how much the Turks really love their football. It will be a great atmosphere in North America with the Turkish fans. And yeah, they'll be in the group with the USA, Paraguay, and Australia. And it's a really, really even group, I would say. Despite what the FIFA rankings might say, it's a surprisingly even group. And, we might even get results like Australia upsetting Turkey, for example. So I don't know for sure. I'm just spitballing here at this point, but that is Path C of UEFA playoffs, where Turkey beat Kosovo 1-0. I think both sides can come out of this feeling good. Obviously, Turkey's at the World Cup. Kosovo will be feeling good that they only let in one goal against a team of the magnitude of Turkey, and I'm sure they'll be feeling good going into the Euros, hoping they can do something there. And finally, in the UEFA playoffs, we had Czechia play Denmark in Path D in Prague, where Czechia defeated Denmark on penalties after a 2-2 draw after 120 minutes, and went on to go to the World Cup in place of Denmark after more than 20 years. Now, this was very interesting, and I think definitely the least expected outcome, at least in terms of looking at the initial bracket of the UEFA playoffs. I think the fewest people, other than, looking at North Macedonia and Northern Ireland and stuff like that, I think very, very few people would have pegged Czechia as successfully qualifying for the World Cup. But they did it, and they did both of them through penalty shootouts. And, if they qualify from their group, they might feel good about that going into a knockout setting. Now, they started the match with a very, very early goal from Schultz, and which Denmark would actually have to chase for most of the game until Andersen scored in the 72nd minute to equalize. But then Krejci in the 100th minute, I think it was off of set piece, managed to bring them back up again. But in the 111th minute, yes, 111th minute, Bodo Glimt's own Kasper Ho came in to save the day. I think that was also a set-piece goal. And of course, after that, he did his signature celebration of pretending to hang a braid behind his head, even though he doesn't have a braid anymore. I'm not sure if he ever had a braid, but yeah, he did his kind of classic celebration after he scored that goal, and that brought them back level to 2-2. But the penalty shootout didn't start well for Denmark. They Højlund actually came up and just missed his penalty, and then Horry scored, Eriksson scored, Souček scored, but Dreyer missed, Krejci missed, Jensen missed, Sadilek was the final one to kind of put the nail on the coffin. And you can see here, so much of this game was Denmark, and yet it ended up being Czechia who scored 2 goals against Denmark, and it was Denmark who had to chase the lead. And I think this is a bit worrying for Denmark. I think they have to look into their tactical setup and what they might be doing wrong. But yeah, obviously you've got Patrick Schick up front, you've got Schultz, you've got Provod, Souček, Krejci, obviously, Kovar, obviously. I think Kovar made some pretty good saves as well, but they did substitute Casper Ho on this sign. Though, why are these photos so old? Like, Casper Ho looks nothing like that these days. Anyway, Denmark was going into this feeling good. Czechia had just beaten Ireland on penalties, but in the end, it was actually Czechia who managed to defeat Denmark. So after having been defeated by Scotland in the World Cup playoffs, in just the World Cup qualifying proper, they now lose to Czechia in the playoffs, and they'll have to wait at least another 4 years before they get another crack at it. Whereas Czechia have been slotted into the group with Mexico, South Africa, and South Korea. So that could be a very interesting group. Again, some people will probably favor Czechia as the side to win the group, considering they are the European side. But at this point in time, I think I would favor Mexico to top the group, actually, and then maybe Czechia in second, and the two South countries will round out the bottom two. One of them might qualify, but I'll be honest, I'm not feeling too good about their chances. But I am feeling pretty good about Czechia's chances to at least make it to the knockout round. So that would be great for them. For Denmark, I think it's a matter of just getting this team to meld a little better, to work a little better, to play more smoothly and more like a national team, if you will. Casper Ho is brand new to the roster, but he scored a crucial goal in just his second cap ever for the Danish national team, and he's already paying off. So I'm sure he's gonna get more playing minutes in the national team as time goes on, and I think that could be great for him. And also a good sign for the Bodø Glimt players, who some of which have also been included in the national team for Norway. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to cover the national team lineups in this video because I just don't know enough about most of them. But what I can do now is move on to the friendlies that have happened and will happen in the near future in the run-up to the World Cup, and see what we might be able to learn from all of this. Alright, so we have a lot to get through. This is from March 29th, so pretty much exactly to the day 2 months since last time I covered these friendlies, so I gotta go relatively quickly. Let's start with Haiti, Tunisia. This was a 1-0 result. I think that's actually a pretty good result for Haiti, all things considered. Mexico 0-0 Portugal, a very good result for Mexico that I think, other than with Mexico fans, this might go a little bit unnoticed, but Portugal is a really good side. I think actually Ronaldo was in this squad. But it was a 0-0. It was a really good defensive masterclass from Aguirre, and I think they should be happy about this result going into the World Cup, going into Group A, I think, where most of the teams in that group do not have the offensive firepower of Portugal, and so hopefully I think Mexico will be hoping to defend for their lives against Czechia, South Africa, South Korea, and maybe get some sort of result there. I think that's absolutely in reach for them. Georgia beat Lithuania 2-0. I mean, that's not really surprising. I would be surprised if one of those goals wasn't from Kvaratskhelia. Tanzania, Macau 6-0. I mean, look, Macau has always kind of sucked. No offense. They know where I'm from. Belarus 2-1 Armenia. I don't think anyone cares with respect. Aruba 4-1 Liechtenstein. This was hilarious because if you remember in the previous round in the FIFA series, Liechtenstein actually beat I think it was Tanzania or something like that, 1-0. So it was Liechtenstein's first victory since beating San Marino that time or whatever. Did they ever Actually, I don't know. I don't even know if they beat. I think it was San Marino who beat Liechtenstein. I'm sorry. Anyways, but Aruba came in and destroyed them. So I think it's such an interesting thing because you don't get these matches very often. I'm really happy that we have now this FIFA series thing to bring some of these unlikely matches to life. Moving on, though, we have France beating Colombia 3-1, and I think that's a really good result. I think that's a really good result for France. It's Colombia are not an easy team to get 3 goals against, but I think this cements France as one of the favorites going into this World Cup to win the whole damn thing. They clearly have the firepower for it. I'm not going to talk about these too much. They're interesting, but I don't have much to say. But then we have Cape Verde 1-1 Finland. I don't remember who won on penalties. I want to say it was Cape Verde. I've got to go check. But I don't really want to touch the screen right now because it could, mess up the display. So I'm just going to quickly Google it on my phone right now. Alright, I just checked, and Cape Verde actually won this on penalties. I think that's a good sign for them going forward. I don't think they're going to do much in the World Cup knockouts if they even get there, but I would say this is a good sign for them going up mostly against Saudi Arabia in their group. Obviously, they're not going to do anything against Spain. I think it would be challenging to expect anything from them against Uruguay as well. Although some people have predicted them to get a draw against Uruguay, which I think would be a crowning achievement at this point. But if they do get a draw against Uruguay and beat Saudi Arabia, they could very well stand to qualify to the round of 32, at which point they'll probably be executed by whichever high-level team that comes through there. I think some bracket predictions have put it as France, which, good luck. But then we also had New Zealand 4-1 Chile. I think that's a really, really good result for New Zealand, considering Chile is they're not at their peak right now, obviously, but Chile are still a pretty good South American side, and for New Zealand to be able to put 4 past them, I think that's a really good sign of things to come. In their group against, the likes of Iran and Egypt. So, maybe they could do something there. And I'm not going to talk too much about these, although Gabon 2-2 Trinidad is kind of hilarious. Bulgaria 1-0 Indonesia. Uzbekistan 0-0 Venezuela, which is, I would say, a little bit worrying. I'm not really going to talk about the rest, so let's move on to the next day where we had Germany 2-1 Ghana. That is interesting because this technically means that they got destroyed by Austria much more than they did against Germany. I'm talking about Ghana here. And they were defeated by Austria like 4-1 or something like that, something crazy like that. But Germany did beat them, but arguably by a much thinner margin than I think Germany were hoping to do. So, I wouldn't put too much of my hopes into Germany going into the World Cup. Or at the very least, their games I think are going to be a lot tighter, at least in the scoreline, than people would hope, and I definitely wouldn't put them to get to the final or really even the semifinal. So it's Germany. They are a top European side, but not as top as I think they would hope to be. And for Ghana, I think they're just down bad right now. I don't see how they would qualify for the knockouts, and some people have even predicted that they could even lose against Panama. But I don't know if that's going to happen, but Panama is, I would say, like the 4th best side in CONCACAF after the big 3. So we just have to see what happens. But Ghana, I think, are not in a great position right now. They've also left off Mohamed Kudus from their lineup, so a lot of their offensive firepower is lost. Antoine Semenyo really barely shows up for the national team. So, we just have to see what happens, but I would say it's not looking great for Ghana at the World Cup, if I'm being honest. Moving on to Australia 5-1 Curacao. That's not a great result, obviously, but I think Curacao is like Iraq in that they aren't really going there with any expectations. The biggest achievement was getting there in the first place, and if they get a goal against anyone, I think that will be considered an achievement. If they get a point, it's going to be the greatest achievement in Curaçaoan football history of all time. I don't think they're going into the World Cup with any expectations, so 5-1, it's a harsh result, but it is also against Australia, which is a pretty damn good team, so what do you expect, right? And then we had Iran 5-0 Costa Rica, which is insane. Costa Rica, look, they didn't qualify, but they are still a pretty competent side in CONCACAF, and for Iran to be able to put 5 past them is, nothing to cough at, right? So, I think it's a great result for Iran. And, there's also been reports lately that the Iranian national team will have their training camp in, I think, Tijuana, Mexico, as opposed to their original destination in the States. So I think that's good. They'll be able to actually play in the World Cup now instead of literally fearing for their lives. So, I think it's good signs for them going forward in the World Cup. But, that's about it for this day. So let's move into April, where we had Norway 0-0 Switzerland. I think it's important to put this into perspective. Not just this result. I'm not trying to make an excuse for this result or anything like that. But I think we've sort of found our level with Norway in terms of where do they rank amongst the European sides. And I would say, they're right around Switzerland, maybe slightly higher, maybe slightly lower. Depends on who you ask, really. But this game did have Erling Haaland, and it was in Oslo. So, not encouraging signs, but also you need to remember that Switzerland is a pretty damn good, World Cup side and a European side in general, and somehow they're one of those sides that just very quietly makes the round of 16 every World Cup without exception. Maybe with some exceptions in the beginning, but in recent World Cups, they've always just randomly made the round 16, and if that's the case for Norway, then I think Norwegians will be very happy to have a team that can make the round of 16. So I think I would not call this a negative result for Norway, but again, like I mentioned in the game with Netherlands, I think if there's any time to lose, it is during the friendlies when results don't really matter. So, that was that. And then we had San Marino 0-0 Andorra. And then we had Serbia 2-1 Saudi Arabia. And I mentioned in my last video, if Serbia beats Saudi Arabia, there should be huge alarm bells going off. And there are. And I think there should be huge alarm bells going off for Saudi Arabia, because Serbia are kind of down bad right now. They're not terrible, but I think their FIFA ranking of 30 whatever is absolutely overrating them. But they are still a pretty competent European side. But, all things considered, I feel like Saudi Arabia should have been looking for, at the very least, a draw, if not outright winning against Serbia. But now that they haven't been able to do that, I think they are definitely going to struggle in their group with Spain, Cape Verde, and Uruguay. And I've seen more and more people predict that regardless of whether they beat Cape Verde or not, I think a lot of people are starting to predict more and more that they are not going to be able to progress to the round of 32, and I think I agree. I would honestly right now put Cape Verde above Saudi Arabia in terms of the chances to qualify for the round of 32, which is an insane thing to say for a debutant country, mind you. But I think right now, Cape Verde are looking hotter than Saudi Arabia. People have brought this up, but Cape Verde are playing with virtually zero pressure. This is literally their first tournament. where Saudi Arabia, they fired Hervé Renard, who was their coach prior to this and who brought them to the World Cup in the first place. But after this result, I believe they just sacked him and they replaced him with a Greek coach who has coached a bunch of Saudi clubs in the Saudi league. So maybe they can do something, maybe not. But right now, the spirits in the Saudi camp, as I understand it, are not high. So yeah, that was Serbia 2-1 Saudi Arabia. Then we had Haiti 1-1 Iceland. Again, Iceland not the strongest, European side, but I think this would be a good result for Haiti. And likewise, I think Jordan should be happy with this result against Nigeria, because this is Nigeria that is really strong. Again, I'm pretty sure it's sans Victor Osimhen, but 2-2 against a ferocious Nigeria, I think that's a good result. And then we had 2-1 Panama, South Africa. Now, remember when I mentioned earlier about Ghana, how some people thought that maybe Panama could beat Ghana and maybe even hope to qualify for the groups for the knockout stage? Yeah, this is partially why. South Africa are not a bad side whatsoever, and yet Panama actually beat them. And actually, I believe this is also Panama's first game against any African side, but they beat South Africa in this. I think they played another game and they drew, but this is not a great sign for South Africa and a very good sign for Panama, I think. And if Panama can beat South Africa, and I think people would absolutely agree that South Africa is better than Ghana at this point in time, who's to say Panama can't beat Ghana, right? It could be another 2-1 like we've got here, or even a 2-0. I don't know. I think Panama is going into this pretty hot. So, yeah, not a great result for South Africa. Panama will be feeling good. But let's move on to Morocco 2-1 Paraguay. Both World Cup sides, of course, and Morocco beat them 2-1. A pretty expected result, all things considered. Morocco are just not a side that is clinical enough to put in multiple goals. So this is a pretty low-scoring game for their standards, I think. But, it is the expected result. You do expect Morocco to beat Paraguay. I think this match took place in, the U.S. as well, or something like that. Or in Paraguay, I'm not actually entirely sure. Then we had 0-0 Algeria-Uruguay. I think Algeria will come out of this feeling good, and Uruguay should come out of this feeling like they could have won. But yeah, Algeria are showing to be a little bit more promising, I think, than they were at the AFCON. So I think they can hope to do something, maybe, against Austria or, even Argentina, maybe. Who knows? Then we had 1-0 Ivory Coast, Scotland. Again, I think it's an expected result. Ivory Coast is ranked higher in the FIFA rankings than Scotland. This wasn't a total destruction like Ivory Coast did against South Korea, which we're going to get to in a minute. But this was, I think, a respectable result for both sides, and if nothing else, I think this shows that Scotland can, at the very, very least, cut their losses against superior sides like Ivory Coast and like the teams they're going to have to face like Morocco and Brazil. I don't think that Scotland can necessarily win against Brazil, but I think they can cut their losses, keep the GD relatively high or relatively positive, and hope to probably qualify for the knockouts that way after maybe beating Haiti and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think not a terrible result, and like I said with Norway, if there is any time to lose, it's now when the stakes are non-existent. Then we had Austria 1-0 South Korea, and I think that's not a super surprising result. I did read somewhere that the reason Ivory Coast, or rather the Ivory Coast B team even, was able to destroy South Korea was because South Korea didn't have that good of a defense on the wings. I don't know that for sure, but clearly Austria doesn't have that. I really do not have much to say about this. I'm sorry, but they are both World Cup sides, so I kind of have to cover both of them. And then we had this, Japan 1-0 England. I think this was in Wembley. I don't think it's time to panic just yet. this was Thomas Tuchel really rotating the squad. There were very, very few like recognizable names in there other than Jordan Pickford. And so I don't think it's time to panic, but it does show that Japan can beat an England B team. Whether they can beat the A team, that's another question, but we did not have much of the A team until we realized what the A team are going to be composed of because of Tuchel's absolutely crazy appointments that he and calls that he made in the call-ups. So yeah, let me know what you think of Tuchel's call-ups. I mean, Ivan Toney, Ivan Toney. They didn't have Foden, they didn't have Maguire, and things like that, so on and so forth. It's a crazy squad for England that Tuchel called up. But let's move on to Netherlands, Ecuador, 1-1. I think that's a pretty expected result from both ends, really. But I don't have much to say. I did not watch this. I didn't even follow this. But you can see here there's a bunch of other European playoff teams that this was their consolation game, basically their kind of so-called third place game, I guess. But this was very much a nothing burger, if you want to call it that. Then we had Senegal 3-1 Gambia. This was this happened in Paris, I think, for some reason. But they were basically, this was more a game where they were like parading around their AFCON trophy, which that's all I'm gonna say about that. And then we had this 0-0 Spain and Egypt, which is really interesting. I think Egypt should come out of this feeling pretty good. I don't think Spain really cares, but I think Egypt would come out of this feeling good that they were able to, prevent Spain, for God's sake, from scoring any goals. But like I said, I don't think Spain really cares. Egypt will be feeling good though. And then we had Portugal 2-0 USA, and considering that in the last day, or what was it, 2 days ago from here, we had Portugal 0-0 Mexico. Mexico is feeling good. If the freaking US of A were losing 2-0 to Portugal, I mean, Mexico must be feeling damn good because they drew with Portugal, which, again, is a top-tier attacking side in European football. So, yeah, I think Mexico is coming out of this feeling really good, and maybe they'll be able to do something in their group, and they're about to feel even better after this. But let's get to this first. Brazil 3-1 Croatia. That's not an easy feat, guys. It's important to remember that Croatia is a two-time semi-finalist at the World Cup. And so I think this restores some of the confidence in Brazilians that, maybe they aren't washed after all under Ancelotti. Some people were very worried about how they qualified in such poor shape, and there are more problems coming, because I just saw a report today that Neymar will be injured for a couple of weeks and might even miss the opening game against Morocco. So there are more problems coming their way. The Ancelotti didn't call up Joao Pedro, who would have been called up if it wasn't for Neymar, ironically enough. But let's not get into that right now. I can't say that I know enough about the Brazilian national team Seleção drama, but they still beat Croatia 3-1, which is not an easy feat. So I think this should bring some hope and some more confidence back to Brazilians. Then we had Canada 0-0 Tunisia, kind of a nothing burger game, I would say. They didn't. I don't think they had, Alphonso Davies for this, which is a problem, of course. But Alphonso Davies is also very much, injury prone. I think he is actually injured right now, or very close to it. But then we had Mexico 1-1 Belgium. Again, I think they will be feeling good about this. Belgium is a pretty top tier European side, and I wouldn't say they're top of the top. I think they're bottom of the top, if that makes sense. Like, they are in the highest echelon, but they are at the bottom of the highest echelon, if that makes sense. And then below that you have your Switzerland, you have your Norway and stuff like that. But Belgium is a pretty good side. They put 5 past the USA. Lest we forget, they put 5 past the USA, and Mexico were able to hold them to a 1-1 draw. They have to feel good about this. How could they not, right? This is a really good result for Mexico, and I think they will definitely go into Group A feeling like they can do something there. Maybe even top the whole damn group. Alright, so these are from May 17th to tomorrow for some reason. I don't know why not today, but hey. For some reason we had a 5-0 Ireland-Grenada game. I don't know what that's about. Mexico beat Ghana 2-0. That's a pretty good result, and I think, from what I've read, what's his name? Brian Gutierrez or something like that. I think he really came onto the scene in that. There was one clip that I saw on Twitter where he was dribbling like crazy. The ball control on Brian Gutierrez was amazing. But also, speaking of Mexican Americans, Diego Luna was not called up for the USMNT. And it's interesting because I think he could have easily made it for the Mexican side, but right now Mexico, I think, are in definitely greater shape than the USMNT going into the World Cup. I think they are probably the most confident hosts right now. And again, not a great result for Ghana, but I think at this point we have now ruled out Ghana from really qualifying for the round 32. Panama might even beat them at this point. And then we have Morocco 5-0 Burundi. I'm not really sure what that's about. And also Jamaica 2-0 India. This was funny. I didn't really follow this match, obviously, but Jamaica scored like really early, like in the 7th minute or something like that. But then it took them way longer than that to get a second goal, and that's how the match ended. India is not known to be particularly good at football. Their national sport is cricket. But and then today, as of recording this, we had Ireland 1-0 Qatar. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I believe like Ireland got an early goal, and then both sides got red carded. And unsurprisingly, is not a great sign for Qatar being able to be beat by a European side that has nothing to really fight for. But that's something that happened, I guess. Then we're going to have Iran-Gambia. I don't think anyone cares. Iraq-Andorra. Again, I don't think anyone cares, but that's a combination of words that I've never said in one sentence. South Africa, Nicaragua. That could be interesting, but it's also Nicaragua, who kind of sucked in their group. But what do I know? Bosnia-Herzegovina versus North Macedonia. I'm not sure how this came about, but I guess it could be some good practice for Bosnia. And then we've got Scotland versus Curacao. I think Scotland should be expected to win this one. If they don't win, I think I would be very alarmed. This is happening in, it says tomorrow, but right now I'm recording at like almost 8 a.m. So it's going to be like, I would say, 36 hours away or something like that. But this video will be out before then for sure. So there was that, but let's keep going. There's still more, friendlies to be had before the World Cup. So let's take a look at them. Ecuador, Saudi Arabia. I would favor Ecuador in this. South Korea versus Trinidad is a pretty random one. I would favor South Korea, definitely. Mexico, Australia. I could absolutely see this be a 1-1, 0-0, something like that. I think 1-1 is a fair assumption, but if there is one side that should come out on top, I would say it's Mexico. Japan, Iceland. I don't know why they've planned this, but this is happening, and I would definitely favor Japan here. Switzerland, Jordan. Oh, that's gonna be fun. I think Switzerland wins though. Jordan doesn't have that great of a defense, and they can score goals, but they don't have that great of a defense. This could be a little bit of a shootout, but maybe not. Czechia versus Kosovo. This is also another interesting one after, Kosovo defeated Slovakia, mind you, in the World Cup playoffs. This could be interesting, and it could be a lot closer than one would expect. I would still go with Czechia, though. 2-1, something like that, maybe. Or 2-1, 3-2, but no, I think Czechia is definitely better than Slovakia. Then we have Cape Verde, Serbia. I think that would be a really good matchup because it's Cape Verde going up against a relatively good, European side. Obviously, it's no Spain, but it's a relatively good European side in Serbia, and I think this will be a very fun matchup, if nothing else. But God, I don't know. I want to be biased and say that this is a draw, but I'm also slightly favoring Serbia. I'm going to say it's a draw, though. 1-1, something like that. Poland-Ukraine, kind of a nothing burger consolation match. I'm not really going to even talk about it. But if you are from Poland or from Ukraine, do let me know how you think this match would go. Then we have Germany-Finland. Germany definitely takes this. I would say 3-0 or 3-1, something like that. Finland are just not a very good European side. USA-Senegal. I'm definitely favoring Senegal. Not a high scoreline, though. I would say 1-0, maybe 2-1. The problem with Senegal, they defend so well, but they have quite a bit of difficulty in the attacking department, even though they are good enough. But it takes them very long to put a goal forward, and I don't think they're going to run over the USMNT or anything like that. I think it might be a 1-0 or a 2-0 if I'm being generous. Brazil-Panama. This ought to be interesting. One of the top sides of the world versus Panama. I think this will be a really fun game for Panama and for them to test their capabilities against other top sides in the world. And, lest we forget, Brazil beat Croatia. So, if Panama can get something, a semblance of a something against Brazil, I'm not saying they're going to win, but if they could get even a goal against Brazil, I think they might feel good trying to at least get a 1 point out of the match against Croatia. So let's see what happens. The day after that, we've got Norway versus Sweden. Oh man, that's gonna be so much fun. I would favor Norway, though. Not by a huge margin, but I do think Norway's attack is a lot stronger than Sweden's. And I don't think Norway can keep a clean sheet against any side that has a halfway decent attack. So I do think Norway will concede 1 goal probably. I would say this is a 2-1 or maybe a 3-1 affair. And then we have Turkey versus North Macedonia. This is gonna be fun. 1-0. This has 1-0 written all over it. Turkey has been a 1-0 merchant as of late, and North Macedonia famously does not allow that many goals. So, yeah, 1-0 written all over it. Austria, Tunisia. Oh, man. I'm also thinking a 1-0. Just because Tunisia, they're down bad right now, but they're still pretty solid in the defense. And Austria, it depends on the side that they're going up against. Obviously, they had a crazy shootout. Did they? Sorry, I think I mixed that up with Germany, Switzerland. Anyway, yeah. No, I think this also has 1-0 written all over it. Or maybe 1-1 if Tunisia is lucky, but I think it's going to be a 1-0. Colombia, Costa Rica. I'm just going to say it. I don't know enough about either of these teams to comment on it. But we then have Canada, Uzbekistan. Oh man, that's hard to say. I'm tempted to go for a 1-1, but Canada's offense is kind of dead right now, if I'm being honest. So I don't really know. If Uzbekistan beat Canada, that will be absolutely massive. But I'm looking at a 1-1. To me, that's just the most likely result. Maybe Canada gets that goal off of a penalty in the same way that they 2-2'd their way, or rather penaltied their way into a 2-2 against Iceland. So Yeah, I think this is a 1-1, something like that. Then we've got Croatia versus Belgium. Oh man, that is a banger. I would favor Croatia. I think Croatia is a better side than Belgium and has been for quite a few years now, so I don't know why Belgium is still in the top 10 in the world. I would favor Croatia in this, definitely. I think they just have a greater offense, and sometimes Belgium can fail to score. And I think certainly Croatia has a defense to defend well against Belgium. So I would put this either as a draw or maybe Croatia wins by 1 goal, like 3-2, 2-1, something like that. And then the rest of these, I will talk very quickly about Haiti, New Zealand. I think this is a good opportunity for both of them to try to get a result. I think if Haiti gets a positive result out of this, they'll be feeling good going into the World Cup, especially against Scotland, I think. And New Zealand, I think, are also hoping to get a result, but this is very good practice for them to be able to play different sides from different places, obviously. And I'm not really going to talk about South Korea, El Salvador, a little bit of a nothing burger. And then we have DR Congo, Denmark. I didn't expect this. I didn't actually hear about this, but that's hard to say. I think Denmark is kind of dead right now. Their offense is a little bit dead. I think on balance, I would say a 1-0 to Denmark. I would still favor Denmark in this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a 0-0, nothing burger. I've said nothing burger so many times in this video now. But that's just kind of true. It's like some of these matches just don't matter for anything. Netherlands, Algeria, however, that will be very, very interesting. I think I favor the Netherlands in this, but I think there will be quite a few goals. 2-1, something like that. That sounds about right to me. But it could be even higher than that. Who knows? I think 2-1 is my estimate for this. I think Poland Nigeria will be a banger, but no one really cares about that match. Andorra Liechtenstein, Battle of the Microstates. Sweden versus Greece. This feels like a 1-1 to me. I don't know why, but it does. Spain, Iraq. I'm going 3-0. Sorry, it is Spain, dude. But I think this does give Iraq sort of an opportunity to see like what they could expect going into their match against France. I think Spain and France are pretty close up at top right now. If they go and play Spain, I think it could be a good indication of how bad they're going to lose against France in the actual World Cup, or they could lose by an even greater margin than that. Who knows, right? But speaking of France, they also have a match right around, just 10 minutes after this, against Ivory Coast. Oh man, that's fun. That is so much fun. I don't think either side could keep a clean sheet because Ivory Coast has some really damn good wingers. And I feel like, tentatively, I'm tempted to say a 3-2. That would be a banger. Or 3-1 or something like that. I'm favoring France in this. But I do think that Ivory Coast will be able to get at least 1 goal. That will be really, really fun to watch. Then we have Czechia versus Guatemala, which is a little bit of a random combination. I'm not really going to go too much into it, although obviously I think that Czechia is going to win. Mexico, Serbia. Another case of if Mexico can come out of this relatively well, then I think they will be feeling confident going into the World Cup. And then after that, on the 6th of June, we have a bunch of nothing burger games, although we do have Canada, Ireland, Lithuania, Latvia. That's going to be fun. Belgium, Tunisia. I would definitely favor Belgium in that, but otherwise I don't think there's not really much to talk about in this group. And then on the 7th, we have USA, Germany. I would definitely favor Germany in that, knowing what Belgium did to them earlier. Although, of course, Pochettino could rotate again and then get some sort of weird result, but I am still favoring Germany. Switzerland, Australia. Once again, uttering words that have never been said in the history of mankind. I'm gonna favor Switzerland to win by 1 goal probably. I think Australia are going to fight really hard, but I do ultimately think that Switzerland comes out on top. Bolivia, Scotland. This feels very much like a 1-1 affair. I can't tell you why, but you'd think that Scotland would be able to take care of this easily, but no, this feels very much like a 1-1 to me. We've got Brazil, Egypt. Obviously, I'm going to favor... Oh yeah, I missed Portugal, Chile as well. Portugal is definitely winning that one. And Brazil is definitely winning against Egypt. It's not going to be easy. I think Egypt are going to fight and defend for their lives, but I do think that I feel like it's a 2-0. I don't know why, but I think there's a 2-0 from Brazil against Egypt. And then after that, we have England, New Zealand. Oh man, this is a Commonwealth derby. England wins. I think even if they bring on a B team, but I think England wins regardless. But yeah, that's not really surprising. Turkey, Venezuela. Oh my God, Turkey, Venezuela, dude, that's gonna be fun. No, Turkey wins. Venezuela kind of sucks right now. Colombia, Jordan. Oh my God. This has 0-0 written all over it, or this is like a 0-0 or 1-1 or something like that. And Argentina, Honduras, I don't really care. Argentina is obviously going to take that one. And then there's a few more games here. I think this one's going to be really, really fun. Morocco versus Norway. Imagine Morocco versus Norway. Morocco takes it though, I think. Or it's a 1-1, something like that. Morocco kind of have a difficulty scoring, but Norway's defense is not that great. Yeah, I would favor either a 1-1 or a 2-1 for Morocco, which would be kind of crazy for them to score 2 goals, but it is what it is. Then we have Netherlands, Uzbekistan. Netherlands takes this one. 2-1, something like that. France, Northern Ireland, Peru, Spain. I'm not even going to go over these. These are just random matches where the winner is very, very clear. Likewise with Argentina, Iceland. Who the hell is coming up with these matchups? Portugal, Nigeria. That could be fun, but I do favor Portugal. England, Costa Rica. A rematch of that famous thing in like 2014 or whatever it was. Yeah, that's gonna be fun, but I do think that England wins, and yeah, I can't click any further anymore, which means that it is the time for the World Cup. So yeah, that's my review and preview of the upcoming and past friendlies that have happened and will happen, and that is going to do it for this video. I've taken a look at the World Cup qualifiers, the final World Cup qualifiers for 2026. I've also taken a look at PSG versus Arsenal as the final of the Champions League, and yeah, that is going to do it. I hope you enjoy my commentary. I am delirious. I can barely open my eyes. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Like this video if you enjoyed my commentary. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more upcoming content, including, hopefully, some World Cup watch-along type stuff. I'm not going to upload any more like World Cup preview videos from here on out. My predictions that for the World Cup largely have not changed, so I would still keep that up as my prediction. So I'm not going to upload any more World Cup content, mostly because I kind of just don't feel like it. If I do upload anything, it'll be a surprise to you as well as to myself. So yeah, the next thing to come from this channel is probably going to be hopefully some sort of watch along of some sort of World Cup game. But yeah, that is gonna do it for this video. I did watch the final of Eurovision 2026. Congratulations to Bulgaria. I think that's actually a surprisingly good winner. People weren't talking about this winning until like literally the day of the final. But Dara sings really well. The staging is really well choreographed and actually really fits the song very well. And I'm actually really glad that it won, all things considered. So yeah, congratulations to Bulgaria. That's gonna do it for this video. That is mostly about football anyway. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.